Welcome to today's session. So, the first thing I want to do is go over yesterday's exit ticket. You don't have to go to the November 30th folder, just watch this part. But today's assignment for you guys will be in December 1st on Schoology. But I am going to go back, like I said, to yesterday's and look at the exit ticket that you did really quickly. So we started talking about percents yesterday, and we talked about how they are fractions. They are out of 100 pieces. So 50 out of 100 pieces is 50%, right? And we talked about doing models for these. So your exit ticket yesterday said Heidi is driving 200 miles. She has finished 80% of the drive. Draw a model to show 80% of Heidi's drive. So she has a total of 200 miles. So she finishes the trip. She has driven 200 miles. And if she doesn't start the trip, it's 0 miles, right? And you can do a bar model or a double number line. I'll just do a double number line with this. Bar model is very similar. So if she finishes 100% of her drive, then she has driven 200 miles. If she finishes 0% of her drive, then she hasn't driven any, right? So the first one I might label on here is 50%. So come to the middle of my number line, right? And label 50. And half of 200, because 50 is half of 100%, right? So half of 200 is 100. Now I can fill in my other tick marks if I wanted to, right? So percent, I can go by tens. So 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then we have 100. If I go the other way, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, and then 50%, right? So my percent is done. Whatever you do to one side of your ratio, you do to the other. So the percents have 10 tick marks. So the top needs the same. All right. So we would need 1, 2, 3. And then we would say, okay, from 0 to 200, there's 10 marks, right? So what's 200 divided by 10? Well, that would be 20. So we're counting by 20s. 20, 40, 60, 80, and then we have 100, and then 120, 140, 160, 180, and then we have 200. And the problem wants to know, she's done 80% of the drive. So this is 50 here. This would be 60, 70, 80%, right? And if I follow that straight across to what makes it equivalent, then we have 160 miles. So she has driven 160 miles if she travels 80% of her drive. All right. So again, that was yesterday's exit ticket. You don't have to go to that folder or finish that or whatever. You guys turned that in yesterday for me. I just wanted to go over it with you guys to make sure we understood the problem. What you guys are doing today for today's assignment is in December 1st folder. So, same lesson, different session. Make sure you open the assignment with Cami. Okay, so we're dealing with percents, and today we're going to be talking about ideas about percents. So these are all apply it problems. So if you want to do this without the video and then go back and check it, you can. Either way, doesn't matter to me. All right, guys. So the video is here for you if you need the help. All right. Some students have a goal of collecting 200 leaves for a science project. What does 0% of the goal mean in this situation? And then what does 100% mean? So if we're sticking with our models, 0 leaves up to 200 leaves, right? And if we don't get any leaves at all, that's 0%. And if we get 100% of the leaves collected, then we have 200. So for this particular problem, 0% would mean that we collected 0 leaves because we have nothing of the total. And then 100% means that we collected all of the leaves for our project, which is 200. So you would explain that in your own words. All right, number 2. Maya is helping a gardener plant 300 bulbs. They plant 20% of the bulbs on Monday and 30% of the bulbs on Tuesday. Maya says this means they have planted 50 bulbs so far. Label and shade the model, then use your model to explain why Maya's statement is not reasonable. So they have a model. Let's take a look at what this model means. Okay, so she's helping gardener. If they plant 300 bulbs, they've reached 100% of the bulbs that they need to plant, right? So I would go ahead and figure out, okay, so 20% plus 30%, right? Because that's how much they've done so far. They plant 20% on Monday, 30% on Tuesday. So 20 and 30 is 50, right? So that's half. So I go halfway through my model, right? 50%. So at this point, they have planted 50% of the bulbs. Now, does that mean 50 bulbs? Well, 100% is 300, but they've done half, right? Because 50 is halfway. 50% is halfway. So what is half of 300? If you're not sure, just come over to the side and divide 300 by 2. So we get 150. So Maya's statement is not reasonable because 50% does not mean 50 bulbs. If the total is 300, that's what you have to look at. And you have to do 50% of 300, not 50% of the 100%. All right. So when you're calculating percents, remember, always look at that total, and that's what you're taking the percent out of. All right. Number 3. Elizabeth buys a jar of 100 dog treats. In 1 month, she gives her dog 80 of the treats. What percent is this? What fraction is this? Draw a model to support your answer. So if she gave her dog 0 treats, that would be 0%, right? She has a total of 100 treats because that's how many are in the jar, right? So she has 100. So if she gives her dog 100%, then she gave the dog all of the treats. And it says in 1 month she gives her dog 80 of the treats. So 100 is easy to break apart into tens, right? Or 20s. You could do either. I'm going to do tens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then we have 100. These marks on the percent have to match up as far as where they're placed so that we're making equivalent rates here. So this would be 10. And hopefully we're noticing that your top number line and your bottom number line have the exact same numbers, not 30 there, 20. All right, 60. Okay, so if she gives her dog 80 of the treats out of the jar, then that matches up with 80%, and that 8 is really horribly drawn, but that's what that says. So 80% of the treats. And when we talked about percents yesterday, we said that percents are out of 100, so that's 80 out of 100. You could look at it that way, okay? And then you can simplify that. Or you can look at it as 80 out of 100 treats and do it that way. And this can simplify to 8/10 and then even further, right? Because they're both divisible by 2. So we have 4/5. So we have 80% of the treats. That's our percentage. Which is also 4/5. as a fraction. So we have answered the question, what percent is this, as well as what fraction is this? So that finishes up number 3. All right. Miss Duda's class is hanging 500 red lanterns around the school for Lunar New Year. Before lunch, the class hangs 100 of the lanterns. Draw a model to show what percent of 500 lanterns the class hangs before lunch. So for this particular question, we have a total of 500, right? So 0 to 500. And they've hung 100, right? So, sorry guys, I had to yawn. So I would go ahead, since we know that they've hung 100, and I would probably label my top by 100s. So we have 100, 200, 300, 400, right? Now I need my percents. 0% would be 0 of the lanterns. 100% would be all of the lanterns, which is 500, right? But we know they did 100. So we want what's equivalent here. My bottom number line has to have the same amount of marks here. So from 0 to 100, we have 5 marks. So 100 divided by 5 is going to be 20. So our percents are going by 20ths. So that would be 20%. So we have answered that question of drawing a model for representing what percent they have hung up so far. So this is 20%. You could label the rest of the tick marks if you want to. 40, 60, 80, and you've already labeled 100. So part B says, how many lanterns are left to hang? What percent of the lanterns are left to hang? Use your model in part A to explain your answer. So out of 500 lanterns, they've planted 100. So out of 500, they no longer have to do 100 of them. So subtract that. And that will tell you how many lanterns they have left to hang, right? So that would be 400. So they've got 400 lanterns left to hang. Now there's 2 ways you could do the next part. You could say, okay, well, if you actually labeled the other percents, right? This is 40, 60, 80. You could look at it as, okay, well, what matches up with 400 lanterns? Well, that would be 80%, right? You could look at it that way. Or you could say, well, they've hung up 20% of the lanterns, so 100% minus 20% leaves you with 80%. Just make sure that you explain it however you did it. All right. So that answers number 4. All right, number 5 is your exit ticket for today. It says choose one of the following percents: 25%, 40%, or 60%. Use a model or words to explain what that percent means. Write at least 2 fractions that represent your percent. So choose one, use a model and words to explain what that percent means. Okay, so I'm going to pick one, and nobody in the class can pick this one. Okay? You have to pick one of the other two. So you no longer have 3 choices. You will have 2 choices. But you will explain in the same way, correct? So I'm going to do this 25% right here. All right? Use a model and words to explain what that percent means. Okay, so 0% all the way to 100% is what we usually show in our models, right? If I want to show 25%, I would break this number line up in a way that I could do that. Honestly, I would probably just go by 25s. I know that 25 is a fourth of 100, right? So we have 25%. %50, and then 75%. Now, that's my model, right? 0% to 100% is represented on this line, and 25% is right here. Now, you could do it in this way, right? And circle your 25% on your number line. You could draw a bar model instead, where you label all of the same pieces: 0%, 100%, and then break it up in the same way. And shade in one of those to get to 25%. So this means that 25% out of 100 is what you have, which is the same thing as 1/4, which is also the same thing as 25 out of 100 total pieces. We talked about that yesterday with our model. We had the little hundreds grid, and we would shade in groups of 10. Now It's not going to equal a hundreds grid, but you get what I mean, right? And then it had the squares going the other way. We would shade in groups of 10. So in this case, we would have shaded in a group of 25 on our model. So it was 25 out of 100 pieces. All right, so that's what this percent means, 25 out of 100 pieces. As a fraction, we can simplify that to 1/4. Or we can know that 25% is 1/4 of 100%. So again, you cannot use my example. You need to use your own. You need to pick one of the other two. You're going to choose either 40 or 60%. Use a model and words to explain what the percent means, and then write at least two fractions that represent your percent. That completes today's lesson. The only other thing you need to make sure that you do is click this lovely turn in button over here on the side up at the top. Right there, that turn in button. Make sure that you click that, all right? And you have completed today's assignment. If you still have time left in your class, make sure you're working on Alex topics.